We're in a difficult stage in the peace process right now. We kind of reached an impasse last week when there was a scheduled fourth phase of the prisoner release, which there was concern on the Israeli side whether to go through with it initially, because from signals from the Palestinian Authority negotiators that went on record that said after the fourth phase they would bank these terrorist murderers that were serving time in Israeli prisons, that after they were released the Palestinians would not continue the process. So Israel hesitated over releasing these prisoners, as they had been expected to do, and instead, to break that impasse, the Americans suggested quite a complicated plan in which Israel was to release even more 400 additional prisoners, and for the first time ever, the US were going to involve themselves by releasing an American citizen, Jonathan Pollard, and release him to Israel. Just before that deal was to be agreed by the Israeli government, the Palestinian Authority President Abu Mazen went in front of the TV cameras and signed off on 15 agreements to unilaterally join international organizations. And this was kind of seen as a unprecedented move, a turning over of the tables, which led to this breakdown in the talks.
Why is the Palestinian president signing up to international organizations a deal breaker?
Well, for two reasons, really. First of all, it breaks the agreement that was agreed 9 months ago, brokered by the Americans between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. But in principle, it goes against the very idea of a negotiated two-state solution, that these sorts of initiatives to join international organizations should come at the end of the process. They should be part of the planned idea when Israel should be the first country to welcome the Palestinian Authority to the state of Palestine into the body of nations. But by doing this before the process, it kind of puts the cart before the horse and predetermines some of the negotiations, which is not considered helpful for a long-term solution.
So what is the solution now?
I think both sides still need to very much try to get back to the table, like the Israelis and the Americans are pushing for the sides to return to extend the talks to deal with the substantive issues of the final status issues, and really to try and, I think at this stage there's a lack of trust, that the trust really needs to be built up between the sides, and to move forward. There is no other way. There's no alternative really, except for the negotiated solution.
Who is the person that's causing the problems at the moment? Is it the Palestinian president? Is it the Israeli president? Is it the American, John Kerry? Is it?
I think at the moment, this, as I said, this move by the Palestinian Authority and by President Abu Mazen was really a very problematic move. It was quite disproportional over the Israel stalled delay to release the prisoners. It was a disproportional response to go to these international organizations and seek membership there. There's a secondary problem, I think, that during the process of the last 9 months of the negotiations, whilst Israel has kind of signaled the willingness to show some compromises and to show some flexibility in the negotiations, there has been only a very hard line taken by the Palestinian Authority in that time. As an example, the issue of mutual recognition, the idea that in the end of conflict that they should recognize Israel as the Jewish state, is kind of a principal value, that you accept the idea of two equal states living on side by side, recognizing each other's right to self-determination. This is something the Israeli government has done, and the Palestinians have said categorically they're not prepared to recognize the legitimate rights of the Jewish people to a homeland. This is something that was supported by the American administration, by the Canadians, recently by Angela Merkel in Germany, and David Cameron, when he was visiting the Israeli parliament, laid it out quite clearly. And it seems that this is this is not a precondition to the talks. This needs to come at the end of the process, but it's a very important that there is that recognition to allay the Israeli public's fears that they have a true partner, and that one day the two sides can live in peace together.
So do you see a way forward at the moment, or is it just going to sit in stalemate for a long time?
Right now, it's very difficult. I mean, I think the sides meet. They met again last night, again with the American mediator Martin Indyk and the lead negotiators on both sides. And we have a deadline of the 29th of April, which is really kind of the next date to look out for in this process. And we very much hope that they can find a way to break the impasse and to find a way through to continue these negotiations. But I think it's quite important for both sides and for the international community to support this process, that negotiating of the two sides, there can be no substitute for that.
Can Europe help in any way?
I think Europe has a two or three roles in which they can play. I think first and foremost to support the Americans and to support the American efforts in the mediation process. They can also send a message to both sides that unilateral moves are unhelpful and that to build the trust. And I think also on the ground up, certainly on the Palestinian side, the Europeans already do a great deal of good work trying to build capacity building of the Palestinian Authority, of strengthening the economy, because again, it's the peace that needs to be not only top down by the negotiators, but bottom up as well, so that the people see the value of peace and see that peace can actually be better. It's a win-win for both sides to improve their lot.
You're the British-Israeli Council. What about Britain?
I think Britain, I mean, again, we've seen recently the visit by the British Prime Minister, David Cameron, which was a very supportive visit. He emphasised the strength of the bilateral relation and also the role that the UK can play within the EU to support both sides, to be a strong and determined partner. It's not a zero-sum game. You can be pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian at the same time and support a status in the future where both sides can live in partnership together. In fact, the Britain and the EU have also offered a number of incentives that if a deal was to be struck, they would have preferential status within the EU, which could open up the further markets of the European Union to both sides, as well as the Arab world as well, that could suddenly open up for Israel and, as I said, improve the futures for both Israel and Palestinians.
Are you personally optimistic or pessimistic that we'll see a move forward?
By default, I'm an optimistic person. I mean, I've lived through in Jerusalem through the tough years of terrorism of the Second Intifada, which were genuinely tough times to live there when buses and cafes were exploding. And I remember the years before that when there was an Oslo process, which really gave both sides some belief. We're kind of in a post world of the violence, and both sides, hopefully, thankfully, do not want to return to violence. And I'm hopeful that for my children and children of the Palestinians as well, that we can forge a better future together.